Hello everyone, welcome to Baller. This is a brand new show brought to you by WhoScored, and it is in association with Ladbrokes. Five-a-side, we're going to give you more information on exactly what that is very, very soon. Each episode, we're going to be previewing the biggest game of football every single week. We've got some Premier League ones, we've got some Champions League ones. I'm your host, Ste Howson, and today I am joined by Raj, the founder of football tactics channel PremLeaguePanel, and WhoScored's very own Josh Wright. We're going to be talking about the key points of, I'm going to be honest, right? This is not my favourite game to talk about at the moment, especially as they're going for first versus second, right? But it's the biggest game this weekend, isn't it? Let's be honest. And it's City versus Liverpool. And we're going to give some insights into where we think the game's going to go. We're going to show you where we think the five-a-side market is for this match, because honestly, there's some real stuff to talk about in this game. And then we're going to see if you can pit your wits against us as well and see if you can have the chance to win £1,000 in cash prizes. All that's going to come later in the show. But before we get to that, Raj, what excites you the most about this game?
Well, yeah, first of all, obviously, we know it's a pretty huge rivalry that's developed between the two sides now, going back to probably the 2017-18 season where Man City and Liverpool first came together in the Champions League. And ever since then, it's evolved into title races, two title races. And now, again, we've got another one, a third one. So, yeah, it's a brilliant setup for this match. And I think what's most exciting is these two teams although they're both elite, they are quite different in how they play. You've got more of Pep's control that he wants on matches. He wants to dominate the ball all the time, and he wants to minimise the chance of the opposition being able to do something to him. Whereas Klopp takes a few more risks here and there and attacks with a bit more chaos. His pressing, we know, and he likes to just attack more quickly through the third. So, yeah, it's a very nice contrast, I think, we've got between the two sides.
I enjoy, to as much as a Man United fan can enjoy, I enjoy the differences in how they both sort of execute what on paper looks like the same formation, but it's an entirely different execution of how they do it. There's so many talking points for this game. I'd like to talk to you two first about the fullbacks. Trent versus Cancelo, two of the most informed players in the Premier League this season, completely different roles for their teams. Who's going to be the standout this weekend?
I think it's really interesting, isn't it, between the two? They've taken fullback play to a whole new level, I think. And Ste, I'm a fellow Manchester United fan, and it grates with me just to see two fullbacks that are so good going forward. But with Alexander-Arnold, I don't know if this is a bit of an outlandish claim, but I think what we've seen from him this season, I think he's as good as Messi in terms of playmaking ability. I think wherever he is on the pitch, he's able to pick a pass. He can punish you. If you leave an inch of space, he's capable of punishing you. And I think what's even more impressive about him is that everyone knows how good he is, but few have been able to really nullify him in the game. I think I've only seen one game off the top of my head, and I think it was away to Inter Milan recently in the Champions League, where they managed to nullify him. And I think that was one of only two games this season where he has failed to register a key pass. So everyone knows what he's going to do. Everyone knows what he's capable of, but few are able to stop him. And I think that's what makes him so good. The consistency that he has is unrivaled, I think, in world football for his position.
Yeah, I think, Josh, you've hinted on a nice point there. I think Trent, what he's evolved is he's evolved that passing range from deeper. He's now doing it from all down that right-hand side. Before, he was more of a crossing kind of player who used to just whip crosses in from more advanced positions. But now you even look at the goal in midweek against Benfica. He plays that pass from quite deep to Luis Diaz, who then sets it up for Mane. So, yeah, I think that is the big difference. And that's also something that Cancelo excels in, obviously off the left-hand side, cutting in. But he's also very good at drilling those passes into the final third. He's not necessarily going to bag you an assist all the time, but those passes from deep are key. And that's where there's a bit of a similarity between the two now. So, yeah, it'll be a brilliant matchup.
It's also the positions that Cancelo's capable of taking up in field. I looked at who's had the most touches inside the opposition penalty area this season, and Cancelo's only 6 shy of Bruno Fernandes. And if you think Fernandes is in there all the time, for Cancelo, who is a left back, sometimes also a right back, for him to be taking up those positions, it must be a nightmare if you think as an opposition, like, where am I picking this guy up? Yeah,
tactically, it's extremely interesting how fullbacks have become so involved in possession gameplay. I think it's over the recent years we've seen that they've become a position that's been left in space a little bit as we've gone from 2 up front to 3 up front. We've seen people drop in the midfield deeper to sort of deal with the threats that a heavy, talented, quality laden forward three can offer you. And it just seems that everyone's dropped back, sort of looking after all the major threats, and it's just happened to be that fullbacks are able to push forward into a little bit of no man's land, and because they can do that, they've picked up so much possession, so much space, and become, even in poor teams, fullbacks are one of the ones that you often see in possession dictating a little bit of gameplay. So when you have a game like this with these two that are, as much as I hate to admit it, absolutely top draw playmakers, and you can talk about the weaknesses that they have or the perceived weaknesses that they might have defending, but what they both give you with the ball, I think is way worth the risk in terms of the output that you get from them. Cancelo obviously joins in with the way Pep likes to dominate in midfield. Is City's midfield dominance? I think both teams are probably going to try and go with a false nine in this game to try and shore up the midfield a little bit. But do we expect City's midfield dominance to be a real key part of this game?
Yeah, I think it definitely will be. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what midfield he picks as a result to get that dominance, because obviously his most used combination has been a Rodri, KDB and Bernardo midfield three. But I have a feeling in this game he might go with Ilkay Gundogan, because he started him in the last two matches now. And I think they've been able to, against Atletico, they completely penned Atletico in, obviously, with Atletico's setup. So I think against Liverpool, you might do similar. And also, Gundogan does give you that more defensive balance. And as we've seen, De Bruyne has now been more of a goal scorer this season. He's got more goals than he's got assists. I think he's got 11 goals in the Premier League this season, only 3 assists, I think the numbers are. So it could give De Bruyne more license to go forward. So yeah, that is probably the edge that Man City do have on Liverpool. They will retain the ball in higher areas of the pitch, whereas Liverpool will probably circulate more of the possession at the back and then look to hit quite quickly to the front, either through switches from Van Dijk, Matip drilling a pass through the lines, or Trent himself switching it to the flank. So that is probably the key difference between the two sides.
I think it's an interesting perception that we all have that Man City, obviously the team that likes to dominate the ball, and Liverpool will look to hurt them through transitions. But we actually looked into it, and since as you mentioned earlier, Raj, when the rivalry first happened in the Champions League, especially, Man City had 66% possession in the first leg, and I think they had 68% possession in the second leg. But they ended up losing 4-1 on aggregate. And since then, of the last 11 meetings between the two, the team that's had the most possession has not won the game. So it's interesting. I think Pep actually learned a harsh lesson against Liverpool there. And I think as much as we expect City to dominate the ball, I think it might be closer than you think. So I think Guardiola is actually quite nervous of what Liverpool are capable on the break. And that actually as we come onto our five-a-side team later on in the show, that will feed in really nicely to where we have picked out the most value.
A massive talking point would have been Liverpool's forward three. In recent times, you would have gone, this is who's playing. In more recent times, I don't think it's as clear cut. I don't think the players that you would expect are in form. And you think Klopp could switch it up a little bit? I don't think he's got 3 definite starters anymore.
No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think you've got to look at the type of matchup this is. He's going to need a bit more control, I think, in his front three. And I think that lends itself very nicely to playing Firmino in this match. I think you've seen in recent matches, Liverpool have lacked a bit of control. For example, in the Benfica match, the last game, they dominated the first half, but then suddenly with that Mane, Salah and Jota, it was Mane, Salah and Diaz front three, they lost a bit of control. They weren't able to keep the ball when it was being played into the front three, and that's what Firmino's perfect at. He did a similar against Arsenal in the second half as a sub, and against Inter Milan in the first leg. Again, he came on as a sub and helped Liverpool dominate more of the ball. So, yeah, it will be an interesting one. Jota's obviously a top goal scorer and can play as a 9, but I think he might tweak it and go for Firmino in this one, and he was rested in the last game as well. And then the other one is obviously on the left. I think Salah is a definite start on the right-hand side, even though he's not in the best of form. I think there's not a natural right winger to really replace him, so I think he is the most likely to start. But then on the left-hand side, there's another debate. Does he go with the classical pick of Mane, or does he go with Luis Diaz, who was on fire against Benfica with a goal and an assist? I think in this day and age, I think Diaz is more of a threat as an outlet than Sadio Mane. I think that part of Mane's game has dropped off a bit. He's lost a bit of pace and lost a bit of 1v1 dribbling. So I think it might be better off if Klopp goes for Diaz on that left-hand side. And particularly when Man City press you so high up the pitch sometimes, you need that outlet to escape that. And I think Diaz would be a better pick, but it will be interesting to see what Klopp does.
I think it's interesting you touched on that Salah's form. I think at the start of, not that I was concerned because I'm not particularly a big fan of Liverpool, but at the start of the year, I was wondering what effect AFCON would have on the likes of Salah and Mane, like the mental attachment that they have to that competition. And the final couldn't really have gone worse from Liverpool's perspective in terms of there was going to be one big winner and one big loser. And the way that the final evolved with Salah not even taking a penalty in Egypt's defeat, that must have had a mental blow to him. And then also in the recent World Cup playoff, Salah actually got to take a penalty against the same opposition, but he missed it. And since that, he scored 5 goals in 12 games for Liverpool since returning from AFCON, which it's not a horrendous record, but by his usual standards, it is quite off. And he's had, so it's 5 goals from 50 shots, which is not for a lack of trying, but he does just seem off. But like you said, he's surely the one guaranteed starter in that front three. But yeah, his form has dipped quite a bit, I think, since his return from AFCON.
Centre-backs. We might be looking at probably the best selection of centre-backs in the league playing this weekend. Who's going to come out on top?
It's a big matchup, isn't it? Obviously, Ruben Diaz is probably going to be out for City. That's a big blow. I think he's their leader at the back. He kind of replaced Company as that kind of authoritative figure dominating and organising. But Laporte and John Stones are still both top options, aren't they? So, yeah, I think I would probably give Liverpool the edge. Obviously, they've got their leader, Van Dijk, the organiser of the High Line. And Matip, again, has had a very good season as well. So I'd probably give Liverpool the edge with Diaz being out. But obviously, City's are probably the better ball players, I'd probably say. I think Stones and Laporte, I would probably class him as the best ball-playing centre-back in the world. This guy can carry it out from the back. And there's something about that left foot. It's like a magic wand at times, the way he can spray passes, particularly in between the lines, to those kind of nippy little City players like Foden, Bernardo. I really do like Laporte on the ball, especially. You
sort of alluded to the expense of all of those players. And it's interesting that you've got City who have spent, I think, over 150 million on Diaz, Stones and Laporte. Liverpool spent over 100 million on Van Dijk and Konate. But in terms of who scored ratings, it's actually Joel Matip, who was a free transfer, who's actually the top-rated centre-back in the Premier League this season. I think, generally speaking, over the course of the season, he has outshone Van Dijk, which, to be fair to Van Dijk, he's come back to a level much quicker than I thought he would after such a career-threatening injury. And I think what makes Liverpool so good at the back is there's not really a weakness. You think that teams would go and try and funnel possession through a certain centre-back who you think's weak. But if you do that to Van Dijk, then you're giving Matip the opportunity to dribble through 3 or 4 players, which, while it doesn't look completely natural to him, he does it really well. And if you stop that way through from Matip, you've got Van Dijk who's capable of spraying those big long passes. So it's so tough to stop Liverpool building from the back and quickly as well.
Do we think Liverpool winning this game tilts it enough in their favour, or is there still plenty of juice left in the race?
It would put them 2 points ahead, wouldn't it? That would be advantage Liverpool. Of course, they could then probably afford a draw as well because they've got superior goal difference. So I think it definitely does swing it their way. But again, Liverpool do have tough fixtures. They've got your boys, United, I think, at home. Obviously, it's not as tough as it used to be. But they've got a Merseyside derby in there. That's obviously not going to be as tough again with Everton's bad form.
Are you supposed to be trying to make a case that they're not in the pole position?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of done it the other way, haven't I? But Spurs as well, they've got Conte's men at home. Spurs are going to be fighting for top 4. So there's still plenty of fixtures along the way, but Liverpool could drop points. I think it is more of a must-win for them compared to Man City. Man City, I reckon if Pep was offered a draw now, he'd probably take it. It still puts them in the box seat, and their fixtures aren't as bad as Liverpool's, I don't think.
I just think when I look at the two managers and who I would rather have in my corner in this moment in time, and I always think of Pep as quite, like, I know Klopp is really emotional on the touchline, but I think he channels his emotions in a way that goes to the player in a good way, whereas I think you don't really see Guardiola lose his cool too often, and when he does it, he does come across quite rattled. And I think if they go behind in the title race, I don't know, I got a feeling that they won't claw their way back, especially as they had such a big lead, obviously, earlier in the year. I do think that this win for Liverpool, a win for Liverpool, would probably, unfortunately, put them in well clear in pole position.
We saw that today when Pep's presser, actually. I think he said he labelled the 14-point gap there once was as fake, because he said that Liverpool had 2 games in hand. So it does seem like it's already getting a bit into his head that Liverpool closed that gap. So maybe Josh is right. He could lose his head a bit if Liverpool do win.
All right, this episode is brought to you in association with the Ladbrokes and the five-a-side. Josh, do you want to talk us about the five-a-side that we've chosen this weekend? And I'm going to say we've chosen, but I'm not taking any credit for this whatsoever.
Yeah, so part of this series that we've got of Ladbrokes is we want to bring your attention to their five-a-side tool, which is a great way to get involved in football betting. It's a typical bet builder concept, but this time you can pick football-based stats to build your bet. They have a variety of formations where you can choose and tailor the bet to your specific wants and how you think the games will go. In this case, we've picked a balanced formation. Quite a lot of the formations do include pick a player to be carded, but Man City and Liverpool are actually the two teams that pick up the fewest cards in the Premier League this season. So we've stayed away from that one. So for this, we've gone for a balanced formation, as I said. So we've had to pick a keeper, a cruncher, who is someone that makes tackles, a playmaker, who's someone we've picked to make an assist, the baller, who's someone that has to make passes, and a sniper, who's someone who has a shot sort of thing. So starting from the back, we've got the keeper, we've got Alisson to concede. Liverpool have conceded in 10 straight games against Manchester City away from home. We probably think that there's going to be goals at both ends, but we've gone for Alisson in this respect. You have to go back to 2012 for Pepe Reina for the last Liverpool goalie that kept a clean sheet at the Etihad. So 10 years is a long time. Thiago, he's our cruncher. We've got him just to make one tackle. If he makes more, that's great. But I guess when Thiago first joined Liverpool, there was some criticism about his tackling and his defending. I think he picked up a couple of yellow cards in like the opening 5 minutes of some games. But I think since then we've seen what an important player he is at both ends of the pitch for Liverpool. He's averaging nearly 5 tackles a game over his last 4 appearances and has made at least 2 tackles in his last 11 starts for Liverpool. So for him to make 1 tackle when you think Man City will probably have the lion's share of the possession, you think that's surely going to come in. Moving forward, we've got, as I touched on earlier about how teams that have had the most possession in these games don't actually win. We've gone for Joel Matip to make 60 plus passes, which on the face of it may seem a lot against Manchester City, but he actually averages 75 a game this season. Liverpool's centre-backs in the last 2 meetings with Manchester City have averaged 88 passes each, and Matip hasn't had less than 60 in a Premier League away game since September. That on its own is around the 5-1 mark, which is huge and really does help prop up this five-a-side bet builder. And then moving into the playmaker position, obviously we touched on Trent Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo as the two most important fullbacks in this game, the eye-catching head-to-head. But we've actually gone for Andy Robertson in this case. We think that while all the attention's on the 2 that I mentioned, that there might be an opportunity for Robertson to get forward. When you think if Kyle Walker's at right back, he's not going to be getting forward much, and he might only have to deal with Riyad Mahrez on the right, who isn't probably going to track back as well. Whereas you think with Alexander-Arnold, he's got to deal with Cancelo coming forward and one of Foden, Grealish or Sterling. And also Andy Robertson's got the most assists this calendar year of all Premier League players. He's got 8 assists, which is 2 better than Trent Alexander-Arnold. So we've gone for we've gone for Robertson to get the assist. And then finishing off our 5-a-side team is Kevin De Bruyne. Raj mentioned earlier in the show about how he's developed into more of a goal scorer this season. He's averaging 4 shots a game at the Etihad across his last 7 appearances, and he actually had 5 shots himself in the reverse meeting back in October. We think that he obviously scored the goal in midweek that won them the Champions League tie. So I'll just run through that again from start to finish. So it's Alisson to concede a goal, Thiago to make 1 tackle, Matip to make 60 plus passes, an Andy Robertson assist, and Kevin De Bruyne to have at least 1 shot. And that is priced up at 32-1 on Ladbrokes for their 5-a-side game, which I think is incredible value when you think that you only need some of those players to do one thing.
The only one that's a bit iffy is Robertson, and the stats back up that he's the one in form, but that's the only one that probably going to let you down, I imagine, if any of them.
There's an interesting point on that one as well. If you look back to 2 of the fixtures that Liverpool Man City played before, I think because Man City were pressing Liverpool so high, ends up that Trent drops a bit deeper to try and help out and play out of the press. And actually, Liverpool scored 2 goals by Trent getting it deep and switching it to Robertson on the other side. One was in 2018-19 where Firmino scored. And again, the following season in 2019-20, Trent switched it to Robertson. Robertson curled across into Salah. So that could be... it's looking pretty appetizing, actually, when you think about it like that. I
just think, especially the Matip passes one, as I said about how the perceived idea that Man City will have all the ball perhaps hasn't actually played out in a lot of recent meetings between them two. And 60 passes is well down on what his average is. And as like I said, Liverpool centre-backs over the last 2 meetings have each averaged about 88 passes each with City. So I think to get 4 to 5 to 1 on that with Matip, I think it obviously does help boost the odds massively for this. And I think that's where you find the value in this game with Ladbrokes. I'll just run through a few more terms about this game. So what makes this even more special with this partnership that we have with Ladbrokes is that if you enter into our own personal league, as Steve mentioned at the top of the show, there's over £1,000 in cash prizes to be won, £500 to the winner, as well as free bets for any player that finishes in the top 20% of the top 25%, of the leaderboard. All you have to do is select your lineup and place a minimum £1 bet via our official league. The link can be found in the description of this video, or you can find it across our social channels. Winning bets will be ranked from the longest to the shortest odds, while non-winning bets are ranked by the percentage of the bet that lands. So even if all 5 of your selections don't come in, you still have a really good chance to win some cash prizes or some free bets. So it's well worth a look. Obviously, we hope gamble responsibly, 18 years and over, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, all the links can be found in the description of this video. And I think we've made a compelling case, I think, for how this game will play out.
Yeah, I want to know what you guys are. Make sure you're getting in the comments below. I want to know what your five-a-side teams are. Which ones have you gone for? But thanks very much to everyone for joining us. This is the first episode that we've done of Baller in association with the good folks at Ladbrokes. And as Josh said, if you are gambling, please make sure to gamble responsibly. As ever, all likes, comments, feedback, anything like that, bang it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Greatly appreciated. And we'd love you to subscribe as well. We have been doing some more of these. So make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Don't miss a single episode. We are going to be back for the FA Cup semi-final. How about that? See you in the next one.